Today we're going to be sewing an H-style cloth pad. This one is a little bit unique because it will have a waterproof layer on one side. So it will not be reversible like the normal H-style cloth pads are. So this is a heavy absorbency pad. The two topper fabrics I'm using are minky and a cotton woven. I'm using 2 layers of original Zorb for my core. So you want to sew your core on. You can use any stitch you want for this. I like a wavy stitch. You can use any straight zigzag decorative stitch you want. Make sure you lock in your stitches at the beginning and the end. I made my cores rectangular to save fabric because that's what we have to do in a charity, but you can make your cores rounded. This is a pattern on our Etsy site, and the pattern does come with rounded cores if you want to make them that style too. Trim your threads if you have long threads. Go to the other side. If your cord tends to shift around on you, you can use a washable glue stick. That's a fantastic option, or a basting spray, or even put a couple pins in the core if your cord is tending to shift around, which minky is definitely known for shifting. It's very soft and silky on the backside especially. But I have sewn enough of these to where I don't really need to do that, but feel free to if you need to. Okay, so now we're going to layer our topper fabrics together, both pretty sides facing in, or the correct way facing in. I like to pin on the outside of my pad patterns, just reduces holes in the fabric in the actual pad itself. So I'm just throwing a couple pins at each corner and in the middle. And then I did add a layer of PUL on one side of it because I want it to have a waterproof layer. You do not have to do this. You can just make them like regular with the 2 toppers. I only put the PUL on 1/2 of the pad. So we'll show you here in a second when I get it done sewing. So sew with a straight stitch all the way along the lines. Make sure you leave a nice big turn hole. That will make your life a whole lot easier when it comes to flipping your pad. When you come to your inside corners where the wing is, you're going to want to lift your needle, or lift your foot while your needle is down, and pivot. And we're going to pivot again. We'll do that at every single corner to get nice crisp corners. Just sew right on the line. Pull pins as needed. Make sure you never sew through pins. It's just not a good idea to do it. That's also why I like to pin outside of my pad too. Normally I can put my pins far enough out to where I can just sew around them, but minky is a little shifty, so sometimes I have to use pins a little bit closer to the pattern than I like. So right there you can see I sewed around one of the pins because it was far enough out. And pivot. I like to pull pins as I go. It's just one extra step I don't have to do at the end, but you can just save them and pull them all at the end if you want. I made my life extra hard and I drew my pattern on the back side of the dotted minky, but if you want to make your life easier, you can just trace your pattern on the back side of the woven cotton. Lock in your stitch. There you can see my POL, that white part on the left side. You can pause the video if you need to see it closer. Mine was just a scrap piece of fabric, so it's not perfect. I just wanted to add a little extra layer in there. So now I'm using pinking shears and I'm trimming the seam allowance, roughly 1/4 inch from our sew line. You can use regular scissors for this if you want. If you use regular scissors, just go along and snip into the curve every centimeter or so. That will help release the tension on the fabric, so when you flip your pad inside out, it will lay nice and rounded and you won't have weird sharp corners sticking out where the curve should be. You don't have to get super close to the sew line, so don't worry about getting super duper close. Fabric is pretty forgiving. And make sure you leave a little bit of extra fabric at your turn hole. This will make turning your pad inside out, aka the correct way, it will make it be a lot prettier. You will have nice pretty finished edges. So now we're going to take regular scissors and we're going to snip into the 4 inside corners. You can do 1 snip, 2 snips, or 3 snips in each corner, whatever you like to do. You don't have to cut your thread, don't get that close to it, but just enough to release the tension in the fabric. If you don't do this step, your outcome of your pad will not be as pretty. It's going to have wrinkles and bubbles with the fabric. So now I'm taking a pair of hemostats. These are fantastic for sewing. If you don't have some, you should definitely grab some. But you can also just do this with your fingers and reach through. But it's definitely trickier with these H-style pads because you have to reach through the whole pad. So I like to use the hemostats, but again, you don't have to. So flip your entire pad both sides the right way. In a second here, I call it my magic wand, but it's really just a chopstick that's painted. I use it to help push out the inside corners and curves. It just makes life a whole lot easier than trying to use your finger. But you can use anything. A pencil that's not sharp. You don't want anything that could poke your pad or make holes or anything like that. So something rounded and soft like a chopstick is perfect for this. So there's my little magic wand. I'm going to push all the curves out, and then don't worry too much about too much of this stuff because you can adjust a little bit here as you're sewing, and you'll see me adjust constantly little pieces like right there. Just kind of shift the fabric back around, and I do that as I'm sewing too. It's not a race to top stitch, so take your time. We're going to sew roughly 1/4 inch from the edge, or 3/16, somewhere in there. Not super far, not super close. So use a straight stitch. Make sure you lock in your stitch at the beginning and the end. Adjust your fabric as needed. Make sure your layers are lined up so you're not seeing a whole lot of one fabric on the other side. Right there, keep adjusting. Make sure you pivot at your corners just like we did when we were first sewing. Do the same thing. Go a little past your corner, needle down and pivot. I like to lengthen my stitch for the top stitch, and my first time sewing the pad when it's still inside out, I do a shorter stitch length for that just so I make sure the stitch is nice and strong. You could do like a 2.5 for the first stitch, and the top stitch I lengthen it to like a 3 or 4. But that is up to you. That's just what I found works best for me. Again, there's no right and wrong, so whatever works for you. Follow the curve around. You see I'm not like forcing the fabric. I'm just kind of letting it flow with the curve how it wants to go. Come up to the corner. We're going to pivot again. And we're almost back to the beginning. Pivot. Adjust as needed. You notice I'm top stitching with the cotton woven side up, because the minky is a lot shiftier and it's a lot harder to line up, but also it's more forgiving because you won't be able to see the top stitch line as much. And so you will see it a lot more with the cotton woven. So I like to top stitch the cotton woven side facing up, but you can do it the other way if you prefer. So you might have noticed I pushed my turn hole in when I came around to it and made sure it was flush with the whole rest of the pad. You should not be able to tell where the turn hole is now, and you can't. So we're going to test it. Folds beautifully. This is a CCO pattern, so feel free to use these however you need. Now this one does have that waterproofing on one side, so I am going to just write the word back on the side that has the waterproofing. Just a fancy little thing that this machine does, but you don't have to do this. If you can remember, you can feel the side that has a PUL. But people that are new to cloth pads maybe would not know the difference. And obviously I will send a note with this pad in the kits letting them know how exactly to use it, which side is the back, because it's a little bit different from the normal H-style cloth pads. So we want to make sure people use them the correct way. But I do love this nice little machine for the fancy little stitches that it does. So you can see the word back right there at the bottom. And look at this beautiful pad. So we're going to fold it the right way. So this one is not reversible because it has that layer of PUL. So you have a minky top and a cotton woven back, but it still is very, very thin. Enjoy!